speaking of the NFL, we may have ourselves the conclusion standing nearby one of the major storylines in the National Football League all offseason. Odell Beckham Jr. is now a Baltimore Raven. He gets a one-year deal worth up to $18 million. Now, reportedly, it's $15 million guaranteed, and the other three would be
$1 million more than what he said he's worth, right? He said he was worth 14.
Well, he said he was worth 20. He wanted 20, but he didn't want 4.
He didn't want 4, right?
So if you split the difference, you would have gone 12. So he did get more than what the average would be there, or the splitting of the difference would be. And so now he's a Baltimore Raven. And if we all acknowledge that it's a prove-it deal, why would he choose to go to Baltimore and go play for the Ravens unless he probably had a pretty good indication that they were going to have something figured out at quarterback, meaning something like Lamar Jackson for this upcoming season? And so that, to me, leads me to believe that we could be also nearing the conclusion of whatever the plan is for Lamar Jackson in this upcoming season with the Baltimore Ravens. Unless something crazy. Unless I'm looking too far ahead.
I'm just happy for Odell. I mean, he's been through a decent amount in regards to injuries. He's been trying to find a home, and he's found someone, at least to pay him what reportedly is $15 million with $18 million potential of earnings with incentives, which is awesome. I mean, good for him. I love seeing this for players. I am a little curious to see the language of the contract because we've seen this a few times this offseason. Contracts are announced. The contract comes out. It's not what was announced. We saw that with Geno Smith. It was a 4-year initially, $100 million deal.
Yes.
And that's, Schefter and everyone. And then it gets reported, no, it's actually a 3-year deal. And it's worth 70-some million. Then you look at the contract and you're like, oh, it's really just a 1-year deal. The Seahawks can get out from underneath it if they need to after this season. So you got to be careful sometimes when you hear this stuff. This is a 1-year deal, so there's not much misdirection in regards to the length and probably how much he's going to get paid. It's just, are they really going to pay him $15 million fully guaranteed? Maybe it's an olive branch to Lamar Jackson and saying, look, we're continuing to build this roster for you. Are you in or are you out? And maybe he comes to the table or comes to an agreement on the long-term deal that they've provided him. I'm not sure what the direction is, but it's definitely a good move for the roster. It's a good move for Odell and probably helps, at least in regards to Lamar Jackson, getting him on board and getting him as part of this team to say, we're trying to do what we can, man, to give you the tools to be successful.
He was obviously on FaceTime with OBJ. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of negotiations, techniques for Lamar, or how it plays out for even Baltimore as it applies to Lamar. But I would ultimately offer this: if there's no team out there that is showing an aggressive approach or of real interest to Lamar Jackson, so I don't know what he's getting on his end, but just from the reports of it, if it's as cool or not even lukewarm, just under lukewarm on measuring and weighing what the opportunity is to acquire Lamar Jackson to your team, you have to believe at this point Lamar Jackson is coming to the realization that it's not going to go the way that maybe he had originally hoped that it would go. And maybe now there is, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, if we're being 100% real, when you hit the open market as a non-exclusive franchise tag player, outside of trying to create some extraordinary circumstances like, okay, Brashadi and company colluded with other teams to make sure that Lamar has to stay in Baltimore, which I don't believe that to be true. Like, if guys talk, maybe guys talk because that's what they do. I mean, this is the league. But I don't believe that there was a true colluding to keep Lamar from going to another team. I do not think that happened. And so, in theory, the player in this scenario when the market speaks and it says that you're going to stay with the team you're with because nobody is willing to give up the compensation or pay you, step into the situation where they have to try to pay you what it is that you want, you actually should be able to look at your franchise and say, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to be able to test the market out. Let's talk. Like, in theory, that should be how this goes down. And possibly, even with all the things that maybe have come out in the media or may have been said on Twitter or whatever it may be, with the home workout gym agent and all that stuff, I think through it all, there's the possibility that the relationship isn't as tainted as maybe people may have thought it was originally to be, and that there's the possibility that they could come to the table and cooler heads will prevail.
Because if they wanted to be a-holes about it, they could have gone the exclusive franchise tag and not given him any opportunity to seek out a better deal elsewhere.
I don't know that would actually make them look like a-holes. Like, to me, that actually might have been, more of a commitment to him saying, look, we're not letting you go anywhere. If a team wants to trade for you, that they can, and we can try to do a sign and trade of the franchise tag, and you can go take their long-term deal. The problem is he would have to be negotiating with other teams under the exclusive franchise tag. What it would have done is it would have gave him about $12 million more in monies this upcoming season if he doesn't agree to a long-term deal. And I think the other thing is, from a negotiating standpoint, now it actually sets up for his long-term deal not quite as robust, right? Like, if you're $12 million less this year, that means next year you're under the franchise tag, you make 120% of what you made the previous year. So that second year, the tag's not going to be as big. So that's why it actually it wasn't a slap in the face to him, but I think it was more of, you're kind of being unreasonable, all right? Like teaching your kid a lesson. Like, we're going to let you go out there and see what you're really worth in the market. And when you find out that, you're not going to make an offer as good as what we're going to offer you, good luck with that, And maybe you should come back and sign the long-term deal that we offered you.
I just wonder what happens now. Like, what's the plan now? Because and there's been some thought that, well, if a team doesn't find the quarterback that they want in the draft, maybe they would come back and try and look into what it would take to get Lamar Jackson, whether it be Indianapolis or one of these other teams that is picking sort of outside the top
How
two.
much time does Lamar have before
July
he has
15th.
to July? See, he still can measure and weigh what you're talking about, Jonas. There's nothing wrong with continuing to see if something pans out that way. But to me, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But at the same time, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm like, playtime is over. Let's get really serious about trying to get a deal done. If I can't get more than what Deshaun Watson has received, then let me try to get a shorter-term contract, as Q has mentioned in shows prior to this. And let's try to get a short-term contract done that makes me feel happy and motivated about what I have going on here in Baltimore. Because for what it's worth, he does have a great situation. Sometimes that gets a little lost in all of the negotiation conversations that are taking place. But he does have a very good situation in Baltimore. He is a beloved player, probably the most beloved player since Ray Lewis on that football team.
Hold on now. Don't be disrespecting
he's probably
Ed Reed. Don't
disrespect
Ed
check,
Reed like
check. Respect.
Justin
Ed
Tucker,
Reed,
too.
Yeah, but that's a little different. But, yeah, I'll give you that. But Ed Reed, 100%. My apologies, E. But he is. Hi, Ed. He's very much that guy to that community. He's very much in a situation where one good season, he all of this goes away. All of the memories become good memories, and you move on from it. But I will offer this. I will offer this, guys, because to me, the team is not much different than what it was this past season. And I know it may seem exciting to get OBJ signed and delivered on your team. But there are a lot of question marks that are surrounding him as a player. And I don't know how much of a rising tide bringing OBJ to your team, truly represents. Like, I think it's a splash in terms of it's a recognizable name. The potential because we're connected to the sensationalized highlights and how polarizing a figure that OBJ is. But when you get down to the brass, tacks of who OBJ is as a player today, I don't know that he's moving the gauge towards overheating. They're going to be hot because they have OBJ now. I don't feel like that's the type of signing this was.
But I mean, if you pair him up with Mark Andrews, like all of a sudden you're looking at them going, okay, that's a duo that you could work with. That's something Lamar Jackson's looking at going, okay, I could work with these guys and we could have production and we could have.
Don't forget Rashad Bateman's there too.
Yeah,
he's
no
very
doubt.
capable.
And I just think, and also to your point when it comes to his situation, if you were to list the top 5 most well-run organizations, like ones that do it professionally, ones that, there's not a lot of turnover, isn't Baltimore right at the top of that list? I mean, John Harbaugh's been there for years. DeCosta's been there for years. Ozzie Newsome's still involved and was there for years. Like, when you just look at well-run organizations, Lamar Jackson's going to have a hard time finding another one that's better than Baltimore in the league. So the idea that he's in this tough spot and, they haven't treated him right, and I just that whole thing just has never made any sense to me whatsoever, because they've always done people solid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, they're definitely one of the better organizations. And look, they've made as big of a pivot and have done it relatively successful as any organization. Like, you went from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. I mean, a pure pocket passer to a guy who's arguably next to probably Michael Vick, the most dynamic quarterback the league has ever seen.
And they did it mid-season.
Yeah,
and made the playoffs.
I mean, it didn't fully. They didn't fully turn the ship until probably after. But just the way they transitioned the entire offense, the makeup of the team. I mean, even how you draft an offensive lineman and what that looks like. I mean, they've pivoted. They've made it successful to the point where they're a perennial playoff team. Like, they've provided him the players necessary to be able to be as successful as he's been. And that's not taking away anything from what Lamar Jackson does or brings to the table. But he's not out there doing it all by himself. I mean, they've set this thing up so he could have success. There's not many other organizations that were willing to sign on for that. I mean, remember, every team passed on him in the first round. He was the 32nd pick. It was Baltimore who traded back up to get him. And I think there should be some equity there. And once he signs, because he will eventually, I think, sign a long-term deal with Baltimore. I mean, it'll be 9 figures in guarantees. I don't care if it's not $231 million to top Deshaun Watson. If it's $150 million in guarantees, that's a lot of money. Like, it's hard, I think, to sign a $150 million deal and sit there and go, yeah, I'm pretty upset right now. I don't know. Should have been paid more.
It's a bummer.
Like, okay, dude, go play great the next 2 years and maybe you could come back to the negotiation table when you stay healthy and win another MVP and win a Super Bowl. Like, I think this eventually, cooler heads will prevail and these two will come together.
And for those who may hate on what you just said, like, well, he's already got an MVP. He's already played well enough. Listen, this is where he's at. Yeah. So accept the reality. Like, that's life, people. Like I was saying, that's life.
It could be
Accept
worse.
the reality of where you are right now and take the circumstances that you have and make them work for you.
And it could be worse. Cam Newton's got an MVP. He can't get a job.
How about that?
So,
and I got a take on Cam, but that's for another time.
It's like a house, though, right? You buy a really nice house. 2-3 years ago, dude, you could sell that for way above probably what you built or bought it at, because that was what the housing market was at. Is the housing market at that right now? Hell no. And people who know that probably realize that. You can't sell your house for as much as you could 2-3 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah,
it's a whole different deal right now. So, unfortunately for Lamar, yeah, when he won the MVP, if he was going to sign an extension, could he have then? Sure. Would he have been able to maximize what that contract looked like at that time? Sure. That's not right now. It's not how the past couple seasons have gone.